Hi, everyone. Welcome to our amazing live stream today on the Snap AR YouTube channel. We're so excited to have everyone join us today for this special stream. Today, we're going to be talking about assets. And our specific assets that we're going to talk about are related to our AR Asset Hackathon, which we're really excited to announce. That we're participating and we're creating. We alongside Lenslist. My name is Rag Harshvat. I'm with Snap AR Developer Relations. And the AR Asset Hackathon, which is going to be running till August 20th, is a really exciting opportunity for you to not create lenses, but to create assets for the asset library. And when you submit assets to the asset library, you can then enter them on our Lenslist website. And you can enter them to win all sorts of prizes. It's a really exciting contest that we hope you all spend time looking over and participating in. We have over $40,000 in prizes to give out. There's over 100 people, different prizes to give out. And so even if you have assets that are lying around from your other projects, there's a great opportunity to send them in. And I want to be clear that this isn't just assets that are your 3D models or your 2D model or your 2D assets, but this is also custom components and scripts. This is also materials. This is VFX things that you might have created. These are tools. We're excited about the entire variety of different things that you can create to help make it easier for other people to submit lenses and create amazing things. So that's going to be our focus of today's session. We're going to be talking about how you can finish and submit your assets. And I'm here with Olha Rykhliuk, who is our amazing AR engineer. And she's going to be talking about just that. How do we wrap up assets? How do we complete them? How do we prepare them for competition, and all sorts of other really amazing topics. So we'll talk more about this contest at the end, but I want to introduce Olha.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me here. I'm Olha, AR engineer. You probably already know me from various tutorials and previous live streams. And amongst other my responsibilities at this position is taking care of the asset library and asset library content. And I'm so very excited that we finally open asset library for public submissions, basically for everyone to submit. We have been practicing reaching out to certain creators or SLN members for whenever we're seeing some of the useful building blocks that are everyone from our community could leverage in their lenses, but finally we kind of have it open to anyone. And in this stream, I'm going to kind of walk you through how I'm thinking when I'm trying to contribute to asset library, where I get my ideas from, how I make my asset, how I package it, and finally just gonna walk you through the submission flow. Yeah, hope that does sound good. And again, just a little background. Lens Studio Asset Library is a endless library of reusable building blocks, 3D models, 2D textures, various materials that feature endless possibilities of material editor, different VFX, machine learning models, sound effects, and all other things that our lens creators could easily bring to their new or existing projects. And you can always find Lens Studio Asset Library on this top bar or in the resources panel, and just use it at any other panel in Lens Studio. So the first, so I already have this project prepared, and this is an asset inspired by Discord question. And on a different note, please come to our Discord post here, share your creations, work in progress lenses, and don't hesitate to ask questions, because sometimes something is not covered in documentation that well, and we could do a better job there. And for example, one of the questions was, how do I access the different outputs from color targets in the shader? So this question is like pretty advanced, and someone already needs like a material editor background knowledge for this. But basically, camera, as you know, camera renders object to the render target textures, and you can layer cameras, and you can mix and match, and for example, overlay render targets as any other textures in your custom material. So basically kind of like endless mix and matching here. And starting Lens Studio, I know maybe for 40, maybe earlier, we have added an option to for one material to render values to several different render targets. I'm not going to be going deep into this, into the math of this method, but basically I'm just going to, so I made this setup where my cube, my box, actually it's not a box, it's this like really weird platonic shape, is rendered to 4 different render targets, and each of them is producing a different result. And this is like pretty basic, but community creators have already started to doing something like this. For example, render a mask to one render target, and then render a color to another render target, and then kind of compose them in a separate material, and basically work from there. So this is my project, and this is my setup. And the next thing it's already working, it's well tested, and I'm just gonna go through the documentation page, which is called Asset Library Publishing Guide, and try to basically prepare my asset, like package my asset to make it easy to ingest into someone's project. So it does not like mess up, it does not mess up resources panel, it doesn't like mess up objects panel and stuff like that. So the first thing I'm going to do is clean up objects like a scene hierarchy and clean up resource hierarchy. So first I would need to do is basically parent everything that is related to my asset under one object. So I'm going to place this orthographic camera that kind of renders the result, the output, like all my 4 render target textures. And I'm also going to parent this object I'm rendering itself, this one. So whenever user imports all this, it kind of works instantly for them. The next thing I'm going to do is kind of rename some of these objects so they don't have these generic names. For example, for this full frame region name that was added automatically, I would call it, for example, debug output panel. And maybe I will also add an instruction for someone like try me. So I can have it disabled by default, and then when someone imports it, they could just like take a pic, whatever is displayed, whatever is rendered to all 4 of their render targets. Always a good idea to include, like whenever this asset, for example, this specific asset is an utility and it's not quite clear what to do with it. So I'm going to also include a material example, which basically kind of does a little magic. It combines those 4 different textures into one, and based on the center of the screen, it's kind of like mixes, displays either first, second, third, or the first one. Yes, I'm going to maybe like tweak it a little so it does not look that scary. And so this is going to be my example. I'm going to call it example, and I'm also going to disable this. And yeah, so everything is packaged. The next thing I would do is also clean up the resources panel. There is like super useful command for that. Basically, you can select several resources and right-click, select group, and they're all placed in the one folder. So I'm going to group render targets. I'm going to group my materials. And I'm also going to, I'm going to have this script in kind of like in the root. I'm going to put this into the meshes folder. So basically what I'm doing, I am following instructions here by just like placing all the related resources into one folder. So this is going to be called color render targets. I'm also going to add an instruction, something like users. And yeah, and finally, let's select this and group it and call it. And we have to give it a name. At this point, name is really important. This is something that basically kind of represent your asset the best. And for this case, I'm just gonna follow the kind of the feature name and call it like multiple color render targets. I think it's kind of too long. So I'm gonna shorten render targets to RT, and I'm also gonna call this folder resources. Hope I'm not making any typos. Yeah, so everything that is related to our asset is placed, like all the resources, right, to our asset are placed into this folder. Awesome. Let's see what's next. So I'm going to be distributing my asset as an LSO. An LSO format is basically a format that allows you to export a part of the screen hierarchy from one project and bring it to another. And it's something that is like widely used by almost every creator. And I'm just gonna yeah, so basically whenever LSO is imported, it is already placed into the objects panel. So I don't really need to add any instruction in here because it's already going to be added to objects panel. But whenever you're making a prefab or you're making something that belongs to the screen hierarchy only, or something that, for example, uses body tracking or head tracking, and in order to work properly needs to be placed under the perspective camera, we would love you to use these instructions. Basically, they also help us to automatically ensure your asset works properly, as well as help creators to plug it in instantly and see the effect instantly. Awesome. So the next step would be to provide more instructions for your asset, and I've already added like a couple little ones, like these little prompts. We've been also using them in templates, so it's kind of like a common pattern. But for example, for my materials, for this material, I could maybe also kind of like explain a little what it does. So this is a material that has this specific setup, and I would love users to like kind of build upon this material. This is their reference. So I'm going to call it like material with multiple render targets, and I'm also gonna do something like copy me. And for this material that kind of just provides an example of using those 4 textures, I would just call it like try me. Yeah. And this some guidelines that are related specifically to the materials. And I'm also going to go and follow these instructions and like clean them up a little. So for example, when I select material with MRT, I see that some of my color inputs have those funky default names called like tweak and 8, and like what is that? Like no one knows what is that. So I'm just gonna go and select this color parameter, open inspector, and I think that's the wrong material. Open inspector, maybe make it a little bit bigger. And just give it some nice name. Just color 0 because we're programmers. Color 0, and now it's all good here. I'm just going to swap the color back to this nice violet one. So this material is cleaned up. And let's also kind of add some instructions in here. You can press tab and either add a comment node or a sticky note, which is a really nice way to add some comment in here. And just add some instructions. Just use this setup for all materials that are rendered to camera. Okay, yeah. This is done. So someone who opens this material, they double click, everything is neat and clean here. There is no spaghettis and tangled things, and everything is nice and clear. Although it's like the most basic example ever. And same comes to this material. Like it's always good to make your graph readable, commented, so whenever someone disconnects a node, they are able to understand like what happened and what's going on. Specifically, for example, this material based on the UNV, it's kind of based on the fact are they less or more than 0.5, which is specified by this screen position. They render different rendered architecture. Yeah, I hope all is all this looks good so far, and maybe I'll pass it to Rak for a split second in case there is something I haven't mentioned.
No, I think this is a really great beginning of really thinking about assets. And some folks in the chat were already mentioning that they were confused on how to tackle this. And I think it really comes down to you're building for other Lens Studio users more than you're building a lens for an audience. And so many of these details, like putting instructions in the right places and thinking, I think it also, doing this process will make you a better Lens developer, right? Because it makes you think about documentation in a really good way of like, how do I make sure my projects are scalable and easily able to be modified? Those are just some thoughts that I think are definitely coming through.
Awesome, thank you so much. And on this note, I'd like to mention that we do have some really cool categories for the assets, something like the best versatile asset or the best well-documented asset, or for example, some script that has like all this custom UI leveraged in it, like conditional inputs, drop boxes, hints, and different things like that. And this is like super fun. This is indeed like a different way to think about just like making something, publishing something. And this kind of brings me back to my script that is basically the main building block for this asset. And I just realized that I'm using the camera reference in here. And whenever I'm going to export this object, this camera will not be included, and user will get this error. So then another thing I would do, I would kind of like help them, like once they import it, I will kind of try to guide them through without like showing any errors, because this could just like make them think that, oh, this asset is probably broken. So I'm going to open my script and also gonna open it in external editor, so it's a bit easier to see. So the first thing I would do, I will add a header to the script that would, I don't know, maybe I would love to add my information, like made by switched, made by Olha, or the description, like configures multiple render targets, and of course version, which is super important in case you're going to be doing updates. And another thing I'm going to do is add a couple lines here. So this variable basically references input, script input. So I'm going to add a little check. If camera is not defined, I'm going to print something like maybe error or warning, and that will say, please set up camera input on. And then I'm going to add script get an object. There are a lot of useful snippets that we've shared with creators. I'm just going to use them and advise you to do that too. And I'm going to add name. And yeah, so now, and also I'm just gonna, like, in case camera is not set, I'm just going to do nothing. I'm not gonna proceed with all this code first. I'm just gonna do return. And now, if camera is not set, there is a message in the logger that says, please set up camera input on MRT helper. Just gonna do here an object. The camera is an object, and then whenever user goes and sets their camera, everything works smoothly without any errors, and any errors and any messages as well. Okay, so this is done so far, and I think I'm pretty ready to publish this. So I'm not gonna include a lot of examples with this asset, but sometimes you need to. And we've created a little asset that is actually a helper. It's called info card that allows you to bring this visual into your project. And it might not work super well for this setup because we are affecting the flow of cameras, but basically it allows you to have like a really common and nicely formatted way to provide some instructions for your asset. So basically like type whatever you need in here and make it a part of your asset, just basically parent it under the object you'll be exporting. And so I'm not gonna do that. And
I just want to throw it out there that the info card itself is an asset, right?
Yeah.
And this was an asset that was created, that this is the exact, like, that's what you also want to get to. Like, you don't always have to think. There are things like UI instructions. In fact, I believe there's even a category for that. And what we're essentially asking ourselves, like, what are different things that will make projects better, and how are you able to contribute to that with assets? So just calling out that the info card itself was an asset and could be something that you could make something similar to and submit.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Yeah, so I'm ready to export this object. I'm going to be doing this by right-clicking and basically just going to export it to my desktop. I'm using LSO export because it preserves all the like render layers and all this setup for me. But yeah, you might have noticed that for a lot of assets, we do use prefab, and this is a preferable way. And basically you make a prefab by just dragging it's like a snippet of like a snapshot of your scene hierarchy in the resources. So this is something that would be another way to export this asset by just bringing it into resource. And whenever a user will be imported into their project, it will not be affecting their scene hierarchy and will not be intervening in, for example, render targets right away, but rather allow them to make another action. And in this case, I would be doing like adding an instruction, like place me somewhere and stuff like that. Just gonna delete this for now. And yeah, so I'm ready to publish this asset. And the next thing I'm going to think about is, so I have the name. The next thing I need is basically a nice representation of my asset. You see, like all these things are like so nice and colorful. It is fun to browse them. And some creators have been also even using their own style to their assets. So it's kind of like easier to understand that, oh, all this like kind of come from one person. And if you check and like this one, you could probably check the other ones and stuff like that. So this is kind of like a card of your asset. And I used Figma to kind of create like a graphic representation of what I just did. So basically this is obviously a camera because it uses about the same visual that Lens Studio camera. And basically I mean that my camera produces all these 4 color render targets. And there are certain requirements to the like not that much requirements for the icon. Just make it like 512 by 512 pixels and make it square and just grab here and yeah, just like leave some space for the caption, for your name, and for all this information. So let's go back to this frame, and I'm going to remove the fill. So I need it on a transparent background, and I'm going to export this in size 1 in PNG format. And also I made a little description, like a really short description to advise into gender, either. Yeah, something like that. This is my description. And yeah, once I have these 3 items, my asset, my thumbnail, and my description, I'm actually ready to submit. And yeah, I'm gonna pause before I go to the submission process and see if there are any questions in the channel.
There's nothing in the channel right now, but please, as we go, please in the chat, feel free to ask questions. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and also we have these like several templates shared. I just noticed that links are broken in the guide. I'm gonna work on resolving that after we end our stream. And yeah, so this brings us to the Lens list page. And if you scroll all the way down to the bottom, you can see this submission form. So basically this first form is not a submission form yet. It's basically something that kind of registers you to the competition and basically provides you with an ID that's going to be used for judging and for associating your account with this specific asset. And so I went in and filled out this form by providing my name, my surname, my email that is used for my Snapchat account, the asset name, the asset type. For this one, I've used tools. And of course, asset can have belong to multiple categories, but for this case, I think tools work the best. And something that we ask you for is a video that kind of demos your asset, and just basically hook up the link. It could be either like YouTube video or Google Link Drive or anything like that. And once you click submit, you get provided with this ID hash. And this is something that we're going to be entering as a part of our submission. And this is Lens Studio submission form. I'm just going to go and plug in this plug in this ID, plug in my Snapchat username, test Olha. It's not real, of course, but you do make sure that you're using your correct username in order to be able to display your name and start here. And this also links to your Lens page, the creator page. Okay, so maybe my email, the asset name, there's multiple helper categories, tools, keywords. So keywords are important. So basically your asset can be searched by any word, by your name, but the name, but the words that are used in the title. And you are also able to provide some keywords used for search. I don't know, I'm just gonna plug in something like shader and I know, multiple, maybe composition or something like that. And external link. So basically, this is an extra option to provide like more instructions for your asset. I've seen creators who have their own educational videos, and sometimes they cover this asset in their video. So this is you can either like hook up your own link, or if there's like some prior knowledge is needed, for example, for this thing, you would need to have some knowledge about material editor, about render targets, and we could just go and just link the documentation page. For example, render target overview, and just gonna use this link and version. This is important to, like, Plan Studio releases come out pretty often, every month, every 6 weeks, and we do need to know like which is the minimum supported version for your asset. So let's just plug in. I've been using Lens Studio 4.46. I'm just gonna kind of 4.46 0, something like that, and here I'm going to browse and select my preview, and something's wrong with this link. Maybe I need to check on that, and then I'm just going to plug in my asset, my LSL object. And another field, another optional field to fill whenever you're using some public resources, for example, fonts, or you've been using some libraries that are distributed under the MIT license, or like common other license that allow you to use and share those resources. Like, make sure to add the license file in here, and and then you just click a submit button, and it's as easy as this. Next, like, there's going to be some review process, and can't wait to see your creations on the featured page of the asset library.
Yeah, it's so exciting. You'll get a chance to be in the asset library where your name will be there and your asset will be there, but also you get entered to win these potential contests with all these amazing rewards. So I think this is a really exciting opportunity for everyone to participate in this contest, and find assets. There's a good question that just came in. So is it possible to use Blender Kit and import some textures and use them in 3D models?
Yeah, I think so. So if you are just always, like, whenever you're using textures that you're downloading from stocks, like just make sure to check the license. We're also going to check that for you, but basically it kind of saves you effort to do some like pre-research. And yeah, feel free to drop in any your AI generated textures, and also can wait to see things like that.
And keep that in mind. Like, we want you to own the assets that you're submitting, or at least have access to the license, right? Because eventually it's going to be put in. This is meant to be your original work. But we're really excited to see some of the things you create. I mean, well, if I'm someone who's made lenses before and I have a lot of lenses lying around, there's probably assets in the stuff I've created before that could be packaged up and submitted, right?
Yeah, for sure. And I think that this kind of happens naturally. So if you're making lenses, you probably already like use certain things, and you just like keep like exporting and importing them back. And if you're willing, community would also like benefit from that and benefit from using those.
Yeah, if you have a great script that you've used multiple times and you find yourself repeating using it, then chances are that, you know, someone else might. And so maybe it's just going through this process of, you know, making a few tweaks to it, making it a little clearer, adding some instructions like Ola talked about today. And then all of a sudden you can submit it for prizes and to share with the community and to get credit and so many great things that come with it. So and we're really excited because the more people that share things, the more opportunities you'll have to use them. And this is really like a way for everyone to kind of get more to play with when they work with Lens Studio. Are there any more questions in the audience? Anyone else have anything else they want to think? Are there anything that you're thinking of submitting?
Yeah, maybe asset requests for us as well.
Yeah. I mean, I just want to throw out some of the categories that are available and just some of our thinking. Like, we want you to feel like if you have really great visual things that you want to share, that you can share them, but we also love really great logical things or kind of building things. This is from the chat, Urban Government's asking any advice for shaders and VFX assets?
Oh yeah, so actually shaders and material, like VFX assets and materials are like a little inside one of the most popular ones. So basically because they are distributed as a single asset, and it's so easy to just get some inspiration from here and just like bring them into your project and add them to the mesh you already have, for example, all these fabric materials. And also because both VFX editor and material editors allow you to like kind of graphically represent. So like anyone could just intuitively modify it a little and customize it to their liking. So those are the most popular ones. And we do encourage you to follow, like to create those, to share those, and to add, like maybe format it a little to suffice like kind of asset you are sharing as a source rather than in the lens. And yeah, we do really encourage those. And we also have like the documentation page has some like very loose, but still like some guidelines into how to do that. And there are also some updates coming to the GPU particles in the next release that would also allow you to create even more robust particle systems.
Yeah, and then the other piece of advice I'll throw out there is to think about, I mean, there's a lot of great places for you to get inspiration as you're thinking about what you might want to build. Obviously, if you have your own style, and you've made certain kinds of lenses, you can run with that. But then there's also, you can look at the categories. We have a few categories like fantasy asset, sci-fi asset, entertainment asset, fashion asset, right? These are meant to kind of inspire you to think like, oh, I can make something under these categories and I have a better chance because I've, thought through that. So there's some really great, ideas. Fitness, like, oh, I want to create something that might help people, or an asset that would allow people to think about a fitness use case. some of this stuff is very simple, but it's meant to inspire you to think about ways of doing it. And then there's inspiration kind of all around you, because really it's anything that maybe you don't necessarily want to make a lens just specifically about something, but you want to create something that other people can use. I mean, you can turn on your television or watch movies and you can see all sorts of great VFX inspiration. And that might, give you ideas of things, in the latest, superhero movie that you might want to create an amazing asset for, or something similar to or inspired by. And those are just some of the things that you get to do. It's not all, there's amazing ideas for 3D models, but there's also just, if there's something that you think is hard to execute when you want to make it in your lens, ask yourself, if you've executed it before, could I package the thing that I did and share it? Because a lot of times you'll find that, we've seen some recent assets submitted like a fur simulation or things like that, things that have logic in them that will allow people to kind of go off of that and build something similar.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and for me, like when I started at this job, I would go to the Lens Studio forum and I would browse the questions. And because I was also learning Lens Studio, like answering those questions can help me a lot. And they also gave me a lot of ideas for the asset. And for example, users are asking again, like, how do you make a tilt this or that filter? And because I already shared this little building block on the asset library, I can just refer them. There's a head tilt left and right asset on the asset library that you can just go and bring in.
Amazing. Any other questions? Give it a second. But overall, Ola, this was fantastic. And anything else you want to share?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So maybe amongst, we mentioned materials and VFX asset, amongst other things, I am excited to see our custom components. So this is basically a new kind of way to package your asset, your script, along with some of the resource dependencies. And we've recently allowed users to create their own custom components. And so I'm really excited to see those. And basically they allow you to operate your script with certain resources, bundle it as a native component. So basically create it from script, call its APIs, and do their own custom logic. So I'm excited to see the community approach, other people's approach to building those.
Yeah, there's so many amazing resources in the documentation that we're providing. And another resource we're going to offer is exactly 1 week from today. We're going to have another live session just like this, where we're going to go through some more examples with our creative art team, our technical art team, who have going to show off some really cool examples that they've created and talk about them in detail about how they went about creating those assets. It's more discussion along these lines, and I think the more you can expose yourself and look through the asset library yourself and see what other people have created, you might get more ideas of what might be missing. Ask yourself, when you've sat down to build a lens and you've looked and said, hey, I wish there was an asset for this, is there? And maybe you can find something that's really amazing. But yeah, again, I think there's a lot of inspiration through looking at our categories, looking around you and looking at what you've already built, and you can find a lot. Amazing. Well, first of all, I just want to thank Ola for sharing all this amazing knowledge. I think it's so incredible and so helpful to everyone here who wants to get started building assets. Great. Well, I think we're ready to sign off. So again, check out the AR Asset Hackathon. You can find this at lensless.co. We'll put the link in the chat here. But essentially, you can check out this Asset Hackathon. It runs to August 20th, and we want to see lots of your creations. Well, great. Well, thank you so much, everyone. And this is Ola. It's me, Rob, and we really appreciate your time. And if you you have any questions, you're welcome to let the Lenses team know. Okay. Thank you all.
Thank you.